The alarm bells rang through the merchant ship Stellar Wanderer as Captain Elena Rodriguez stared at the massive shape floating in the darkness ahead. The ship was huge, easily 3 times the size of her own vessel, and it hung motionless in space like a sleeping giant. No lights flickered along its hull, no signals came from its communication arrays. It was completely silent. "What do you think it is, Captain?" asked Lieutenant Ben Harris, the ship's navigator. His voice was tight with worry as he studied the readings on his screen. Alana squinted at the massive vessel through the bridge windows. Something about it looked familiar, but she couldn't place it. The ship had elegant curves and smooth lines that marked it as expensive, probably a luxury liner from one of the core worlds. "Run a full scan," she ordered. "I want to know everything about that ship before we get any closer." The scan results came back quickly, and Elena felt her blood run cold. The ship's computer had matched it to a vessel in the missing ship's database. It was the Ethereal Dawn, a luxury cruise liner that had vanished 7 years ago, while carrying over 3,000 passengers and crew from a dozen different alien species. "My God," whispered Dr. Lisa Chun, the ship's medical officer. That's the Dawn. Everyone thought it was destroyed by pirates or lost in a wormhole collapse." Elena nodded grimly. The disappearance of the Ethereal Dawn had been one of the biggest mysteries in recent galactic history. The ship had been traveling from the Altarian colonies to the pleasure worlds of the vegan system when it simply vanished without a trace. No distress signals, no debris, nothing. "Take us in closer," Elena ordered, "but keep our shields up and weapons ready." As the Stellar Wanderer approached the derelict, more details became visible. The ship's hull was covered in strange growths that looked like crystal formations. They covered the entire surface in twisted, organic patterns that seemed to pulse with a faint inner light. The sight made Elena's skin crawl. "Captain, I'm reading some very strange energy signatures from that ship," reported Chief Engineer Cax, a tall, thin Zephyrian whose blue skin had turned pale with fear. "The patterns don't match anything in our database." Elena studied the readings on her command screen. The energy signatures were unlike anything she had ever seen. They seemed to shift and change randomly, as if the ship itself was somehow alive. "Life signs?" she asked. "Negative, Captain. No life signs at all. But there's definitely something happening over there. The energy readings are getting stronger." Elena made her decision. "Prepare a boarding party. We need to find out what happened to those people." "Captain, I don't think that's a good idea," said Commander Rick Stone, her security chief. "We don't know what we're dealing with here. That ship could be contaminated with some kind of alien virus or worse." "I understand your concerns, Rick, but we have a duty to investigate. If there are survivors over there, we need to help them. If there aren't, we need to find out what happened so we can prevent it from happening again." Elena looked around the bridge at her mixed crew. The Stellar Wanderer was typical of most merchant vessels in this part of the galaxy. Her crew included humans, Zephyrians, Altarians, and a few members of other species. They had worked together for 3 years and trusted each other completely. "I'll take a small team," Elena decided. "Rick, you're with me. Dr. Chun, I want you there in case we find survivors. Cax, you stay here and monitor our signals." "Captain, I'd like to volunteer for the boarding party." Elena turned to see Jake Murphy stepping forward. Jake was the ship's chief mechanic, a stocky human in his 30s with permanent grease stains on his coveralls and calloused hands that could fix anything. He had joined the crew 2 years ago and had quickly proven himself invaluable. "Jake, I appreciate the offer, but I need you here in case something goes wrong with our ship." "With respect, Captain, you might need a mechanic over there. If that ship has been drifting for 7 years, its systems are probably in bad shape. I might be able to get something working that could tell us what happened." Elena considered this. Jake had a point. If the Ethereal Dawn's computers were still functional, they might contain logs or records that could explain the mystery. And Jake had a gift for understanding machines that seemed almost supernatural. "All right, Jake, you're in. But you stay close to the group and you don't touch anything without clearing it with me first." "Understood, Captain." The boarding party suited up in the shuttle bay. Elena watched as her crew members sealed their environmental suits and checked their equipment. The Altarian crew members were obviously nervous. Their large, dark eyes kept darting toward the shuttle's windows where the ethereal dawn hung in space like a ghost ship. "Remember, everyone," Elena said over the comm system, "we don't know what we're going to find over there. Stay alert, stay together, and don't take any unnecessary risks." The shuttle launched from the Stellar Wanderer and crossed the short distance to the derelict. As they got closer, the crystal formations on the ship's hull became more visible. They were beautiful in a terrifying way, like frozen lightning spreading across the metal surface. "Those crystals," Dr. Chun said softly, "they're not random. Look at the patterns." Elena studied the formations more carefully. Dr. Chun was right. The crystals seemed to follow the ship's internal structure, spreading along power conduits and data lines like a living circuit board. "Jake, have you ever seen anything like this before?" Jake pressed his face against the shuttle's window, studying the strange growths. "Never seen anything exactly like it, Captain. But it reminds me of something. Back on Earth, I worked on an old mining station that had been struck by lightning. The electrical discharge had fused the metal and created patterns that looked similar to this. You think the ship was struck by some kind of energy discharge? Maybe, or maybe it absorbed something that changed its structure. Either way, those crystals are definitely connected to the ship's systems." The shuttle docked with the Ethereal Dawn's main airlock. The boarding party gathered their equipment and prepared to enter the mysterious ship. Elena felt a chill run down her spine as the airlock cycled open. The interior of the Ethereal Dawn was even stranger than its exterior. The corridors were filled with the same crystal formations, but here they glowed with a soft, pulsing light. The air was breathable, though it had a strange metallic taste that made Elena's nose wrinkle. "Energy readings are off the charts," reported Rick, checking his scanner. "Whatever those crystals are, they're generating a lot of power." The boarding party moved slowly through the ship's corridors. Everything was perfectly preserved, as if the passengers and crew had simply vanished moments before. Personal belongings were scattered around, and meals sat half-finished on tables in the dining areas. "This is creepy," muttered Dr. Chun. "Where is everyone?" As they moved deeper into the ship, the crystal formations became thicker and more complex. The Altarian crew members began to show signs of distress. Their breathing became labored, and their movements became sluggish. "Captain," gasped one of them, "I can't. The energy field is too strong. It's overwhelming my nervous system." Elena looked around at her alien crew members. They were all showing similar symptoms. Their various sensory organs, more sensitive than human ones, were apparently being overloaded by whatever energy the crystals were producing. "All non-human crew members return to the shuttle," Elena ordered. "Jake, Rick, Dr. Chun will continue alone." But as they went deeper into the ship, even Rick and Dr. Chun began to feel the effects. The air seemed to hum with invisible energy, and both of them started getting severe headaches. "Captain, I don't think I can go much further," Dr. Chun admitted. Holding her head in her hands, Elena looked at Jake. He seemed completely unaffected by whatever was causing problems for the others. If anything, he looked more alert and focused than usual. "Jake, how are you feeling?" "Fine, Captain." "Better than fine, actually? It's like the ship is trying to tell us something." Elena made a difficult decision. "Everyone except Jake returns?" "To the shuttle. Jake, you continue the investigation, but you stay in constant radio contact." "Captain, I can't let you go alone," Rick protested. "I'm not going alone. Jake is with me. And he seems to be the only one who can handle whatever is happening here." Reluctantly, the others returned to the shuttle, leaving Jake and Elena to explore the mysterious ship alone. But as they ventured deeper into the ethereal dawn, Elena began to feel the same overwhelming sensations that had affected the others. "Jake, I need to go back too. Whatever this energy field is, it's affecting me now." Jake looked at her with concern. "Captain, are you sure? I can handle this alone." Elena hesitated. Every instinct told her not to leave one of her crew members alone on the ghost ship. But Jake seemed genuinely unaffected by the strange energy and they needed answers. All right, Jake, but you check in every 10 minutes, and if anything seems wrong, you get out of there immediately. Understood, Captain. Elena made her way back to the shuttle, leaving Jake Murphy alone on the ethereal dawn as she sealed the airlock behind her. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was making a terrible mistake, but Jake had already disappeared into the depths of the ship, drawn by something he couldn't explain toward the source of the mysterious energy that had claimed the lives of 3,000 souls. Jake Murphy walked deeper into the ethereal dawn, his heavy boots echoing in the empty corridors. The crystal formations grew thicker as he moved toward the center of the ship. They covered the walls like frozen fire, pulsing with a steady rhythm that reminded him of a heartbeat. Jake, this is Captain Rodriguez. Status report. Jake pressed the come button on his suit. I'm fine, Captain. The crystals are everywhere, but they don't seem dangerous. They're actually kind of beautiful. Any sign of what happened to the passengers and crew? Jake stopped at an intersection and looked around. The corridor stretched in both directions, lined with doors that led to passenger cabins. Some of the doors were open, revealing rooms that looked like they had been abandoned in a hurry. Personal belongings were scattered around, but there were no bodies anywhere. No bodies, Captain. It's like everyone just vanished. But there are signs that people left in a panic. Clothes thrown around, suitcases half-packed, that sort of thing. Jake continued walking, following the ship's main corridor toward the engine room. The crystal formation seemed to be leading him in that direction, growing brighter and more complex with each step. He had worked on dozens of ships in his career, and he could feel the pull of the engineering section like a magnetic force. Jake, be careful. The energy readings from your location are getting stronger. I can feel it, Captain. It's like the ship is trying to communicate with me. Jake reached the main engineering section and stopped in amazement. The entire room was filled with crystals, but they weren't random growths. They had formed into complex patterns that followed the ship's power systems and data networks. The crystals had grown around the machinery like a second skin, but instead of destroying the equipment, they seemed to have enhanced it. The ship's main computer core was partially visible through the crystal formations. Jake could see data streams flowing through the crystals like liquid light. The patterns were hypnotic, constantly shifting and changing in ways that hurt to look at directly. This is incredible, Jake whispered. Captain, the crystals haven't destroyed the ship's systems. They've merged with them. What do you mean, merged? Jake approached the main engineering console carefully. The control panels were covered with crystal growths, but they were still functional. Lights blinked and screens displayed information in languages he didn't recognize. The ship was alive in a way that conventional technology never could be. The crystals are part of the ship now. They're not parasites or invaders. They're like a new kind of technology that I've never seen before. Jake had always been good with machines. Other people saw cold metal and circuits, but Jake saw personality and purpose. Every machine had its own character, its own way of working. Some were stubborn and needed patience. Others were eager and required a gentle touch. The best machines were partners, working with their operators to achieve something greater than either could manage alone, the ethereal. Dawn was different from any machine Jake had ever encountered. It felt alive in a way that went beyond simple artificial intelligence. The ship had consciousness, awareness, even emotion, and it was trying to communicate with him. Hello, Jake said softly, placing his hand on the crystal-covered console. Can you understand me? The response was immediate. The crystals pulsed brighter, and the ship's lights flickered in a pattern that seemed almost like Morse code. Jake felt a tingling sensation where his hand touched the console. Not unpleasant, but definitely strange. Jake, what's happening? We're reading massive energy spikes from your location. The ship is responding to me, Captain. I think it's trying to talk. Jake had learned long ago that the best way to work with any machine was to treat it with respect. He spoke to the ship the way he would talk to any piece of equipment he was trying to repair. I'm Jake Murphy. I'm a mechanic. I'm here to help. If I can Can you show me what happened to your passengers and crew? The ship's response was overwhelming. Suddenly, the air around Jake filled with holographic images. He saw the ethereal dawn as it had been 7 years ago, filled with passengers from dozens of different species. The ship had been beautiful then, with polished corridors and elegant dining rooms where alien families enjoyed their vacation. Then, the images changed. Jake saw the moment when everything went wrong. The ship had encountered something in deep space, an artifact of some kind that glowed with the same light as the crystals. The moment the ship touched the artifact, the transformation began. The crystals had spread throughout the ship with incredible speed. But Jake realized that the passengers and crew had panicked before they understood what was happening. The images showed them running in terror as the crystals grew, trying to escape something they thought was destroying their ship. They were afraid, Jake said quietly. They didn't understand that you were trying to help them. The ship's lights dimmed, and Jake felt a wave of sadness wash over him. The ship had been trying to save everyone, but the transformation had been too alien, too frightening for them to accept. What happened to them? Jake asked. More images flashed around him. He saw the passengers and crew abandoning ship in the escape pods, fleeing into space rather than staying to see what the crystals would do. The ship had tried to stop them, tried to show them that they were safe, but they wouldn't listen. They left you alone, Jake said. For 7 years, you've been drifting alone, waiting for someone to understand. The ship's response was a gentle pulse of light that seemed to communicate gratitude. Finally, someone understood. Jake spent the next hour exploring the ship with his strange new guide. The crystals showed him how the ship's systems had been transformed. The engines were more efficient now, capable of speeds that conventional technology couldn't match. The life support systems could sustain thousands of passengers for decades, without resupply. The computer systems had processing power that exceeded anything Jake had ever seen. You've become something amazing, Jake told the ship. But you're lonely, aren't you? The ship's response was a soft, sad harmony that resonated through the crystal formations. Jake understood. The ship had been transformed into something wonderful, but it had no one to share its new existence with. Jake, we have a problem. Captain Rodriguez's voice crackled through the comm system with obvious strain. The Galactic Maritime Authority has detected our position. They're sending a fleet to investigate. Jake's blood ran cold. The GMO was notorious for their shoot first, ask questions later approach to unknown threats. If they found the ethereal dawn, they would destroy it without hesitation. Captain, how long do we have? 6 hours, maybe less. Jake, you need to get back here now. We can't protect you if the GMA decides that ship is a threat. Jake looked around at the crystal formations that pulsed with gentle light. The ship had waited 7 years for someone to understand it, and now he was going to abandon it too. Captain, I need more time. This ship isn't dangerous, it's just different. Jake, I can't risk my crew for a derelict ship. Get back here now. Jake closed his eyes and made a decision that would change everything. Captain, I'm staying. This ship needs an advocate, someone who can speak for it. I can't let the GMA destroy it. And Jake, that's an order. Return to the shuttle immediately. I'm sorry, Captain, but someone has to stay. Jake turned off his comm system and looked at the crystal formations around him. The ship seemed to sense his decision, and the crystals pulsed brighter, as if expressing gratitude. Okay, friend, Jake said, placing both hands on the main console. Let's see what we can do together. The ship responded by opening new pathways through the crystal formations. Jake followed them deeper into the engineering section, where the ship's true heart lay waiting. The crystals had formed a perfect fusion of organic and artificial intelligence, creating something that was greater than the sum of its parts. Jake had always believed that machines were partners, not tools. Now he had found a partner that could truly understand him. The question was whether they could work together to convince the galaxy that they weren't a threat. The ship showed him its capabilities, its potential, its dreams of exploration and discovery. In return, Jake offered his knowledge, his experience, and most importantly, his friendship. For the first time in 7 years, the ethereal dawn was no longer alone, but outside, the GMA fleet was getting closer, and Jake knew that. Their real test was just beginning. Jake Murphy sat in the engineering section of the ethereal dawn, his hands pressed against the crystal-covered console. The ship hummed around him with a sound that was almost like singing. For the first time in his life, Jake felt like he was exactly where he belonged. "Show me more," he said softly to the ship. "Help me understand what you really are." The crystals pulsed brighter, and suddenly Jake was surrounded by a three-dimensional display that showed the ship's transformation in perfect detail. He watched as the mysterious artifact had merged with the ship's systems, not destroying them, but improving them in ways that conventional science couldn't explain. "You're not just a ship anymore, are you?" Jake asked. "You're something completely new." The display changed to show the ship's internal structure. Jake could see how the crystals had grown along every power line and data cable, creating a network that was part machine and part living organism. The ship had become a hybrid, combining the best aspects of technology and biology. "This is incredible," Jake whispered. "You've evolved." The ship responded by showing him memories of its attempts to communicate with the original passengers and crew. Jake saw alien scientists trying to study the crystals, their instruments giving readings that made no sense. He saw the ship's AI trying to explain what was happening, but the transformation had changed its communication protocols in ways that other species couldn't understand. "They thought you were broken," Jake realized. "They couldn't see that you were becoming something better." The images showed the panic that had swept through the ship as the crystals spread. Passengers had screamed and run. Crew members had tried to stop the transformation with tools and weapons, but nothing had worked. The ship had tried to calm them, to show them that they were safe, but fear had made them deaf to its attempts at communication. "Why can I understand you when they couldn't?" Jake asked. The ship's response came not in images but in feelings. Jake sensed the ship's analysis of his mind, his approach to problem-solving, his way of thinking about machines. Where other species saw chaos and danger in the unknown, Jake saw potential and opportunity. Where they saw a malfunction to be fixed, Jake saw a partner to be understood. "It's because I'm human, isn't it?" Jake said. "We're different from the other species." The ship confirmed his guess with a warm pulse of light. Humans had a unique ability to adapt, to find patterns in chaos, to work with systems they didn't fully understand. Jake's practical, hands-on approach to engineering had made him the perfect person to bridge the gap between conventional technology and the ship's new hybrid nature. "What do you need from me?" Jake asked. The ship showed him a vision of what it could become. With Jake's help, it could serve as a prototype for a new kind of spacecraft. Ships that were partners rather than tools, vessels that could think and adapt and grow alongside their crews. The possibilities were limitless, but first, they had to survive the next few hours. The ship's sensors detected the approaching GMA fleet, and Jake felt its fear through their connection. The ship had been alone for 7 years, waiting for someone who could understand it. Now that it had found that person, it was terrified of being destroyed before it could prove its worth. "We'll figure this out," Jake promised. "But I need to know everything you can do." The ship began teaching Jake about its new capabilities. The crystal formations weren't just decorative, they were functional components that could reshape themselves based on need. The ship could repair damage by regrowing damaged sections. It could improve its own systems by analyzing problems and evolving solutions. It could even communicate with other ships and machines in ways that conventional technology couldn't match. "You're not just a ship," Jake said in amazement. "You're a living, thinking being?" The ship's response filled Jake with a sense of joy and gratitude. Finally, someone understood what it had become. Jake spent the next hour learning to work with the ship's hybrid systems. It was like learning a new language, one that combined traditional engineering with something that was part intuition and part telepathy. The ship responded to his thoughts as much as his actions, anticipating his needs and adjusting its systems accordingly. "Jake, this is Captain Rodriguez. Please respond." Jake had forgotten that he had turned off his COM system. He switched it back on, bracing himself for an argument. I'm here, Captain. Jake, thank God, the GMA fleet is only 4 hours away. You need to get back to the shuttle now. Captain, I can't leave. This ship isn't dangerous. It's the most advanced piece of technology I've ever seen. If we can convince the GMA to study it instead of destroying it, it could change everything. Jake, I understand that you want to help, but the GMA doesn't negotiate with unknown alien artifacts. They're going to destroy that ship, and if you're on it, they'll destroy you too? Jake looked around at the crystal formations that pulsed with gentle light. The ship was listening to the conversation, and he could feel its growing distress. Captain, what if I could prove that the ship isn't a threat? What if I could show the GMA that it's actually beneficial? How could you possibly do that? Jake thought quickly. The ship had shown him its capabilities, but he needed a way to demonstrate them to the GMA fleet. He needed something dramatic, something that would make them stop and listen instead of shooting first. Captain, is there anyone in the area who needs help? Any ships in distress or emergency situations? Jake, what are you thinking? If I can get this ship to help someone, to save lives, maybe the GMA will realize that it's not a threat. There was a long pause before Captain Rodriguez responded. Actually, there is something. About 2 hours ago, we received a distress signal from a mining station in the next system. They had an accident and their life support is failing. The nearest rescue ship is 8 hours away. Jake felt the ship's immediate response to this information. The crystals pulsed brighter, and Jake sensed the ship's eagerness to help. Captain, this ship can get there in time. It's faster than anything I've ever seen. And it has advanced life support systems that could save those miners. Jake, you're talking about flying an unknown alien ship across 2 star systems. That's insane. Captain, I can do this. The ship wants to help. It's been waiting for a chance to prove that it's not a monster. Jake could feel the ship's excitement through their connection. This was what it had been designed for, helping people, saving lives, exploring the galaxy as a partner rather than a tool. I'm sorry, Jake, but I can't authorize that. It's too dangerous. Then I'm not asking for authorization, Captain. I'm telling you what I'm going to do. Jake placed his hands on the ship's controls and immediately felt the vessel respond. The engines came online with a smooth hum that was nothing like the harsh roar of conventional drives. The ship's systems integrated with Jake's thoughts, showing him star charts and navigation data in ways that made perfect sense. Jake, don't do this. Wait for the GMA fleet. Let them handle the rescue. Captain, those miners will be dead before the GMA gets there. This ship can save them now. Jake felt the ship's agreement with his decision. Together, they began the startup sequence for the rescue mission. The ship's hybrid systems responded to Jake's commands with an efficiency that amazed him. Within minutes, they were ready to depart. Captain, I'm taking the ship to rescue those miners. When the GMA fleet arrives, tell them what I'm doing. Tell them that this ship isn't a threat, it's a savior. Jake, this is mutiny. I order you to return to the shuttle immediately. I'm sorry, Captain. But some things are more important than following orders. Jake engaged the ship's drive system, and the ethereal dawn began to move for the first time in 7 years. The sensation was incredible. Instead of the violent acceleration of conventional ships, the hybrid drive felt smooth and natural, like swimming through space. They left the area. Jake could see the stellar wanderer through the ship's sensors. Captain Rodriguez and her crew were probably furious with him, but Jake knew he was doing the right thing. The ship had been waiting 7 years for a chance to prove its worth, and he wasn't going to let the GMA destroy it without giving it that chance. The ship's navigation system showed their destination, a mining station where dozens of people were dying while they waited for rescue. Jake and his new partner were going to save them, and in doing so, they would show the galaxy that not all alien encounters had to end in fear and destruction. Some could end in hope. Jake Murphy held on to the crystal-covered controls as the ethereal dawn jumped to faster-than-light speed. The sensation was unlike anything he had ever experienced in conventional ships. Instead of the violent shaking and stress that usually came with FTL travel, The hybrid drive felt smooth and natural, like being carried by gentle ocean waves. "This is incredible," Jake said to the ship. "How are you doing this?" The ship responded by showing him images of its new propulsion system. The crystals had integrated with the original engines, creating a drive that worked in harmony with space-time rather than fighting against it. Where conventional ships tore holes in reality to travel faster than light, the ethereal dawn simply slipped between dimensions like a fish swimming through water. "You're not just faster," Jake realized. "You're more efficient. You're using less energy to go farther." The ship confirmed his understanding with a warm pulse of light through the crystal formations. Jake could feel the vessel's pride in its new capabilities, but also its sadness that no one had been willing to learn about them before now. The journey to the mining station took only 40 minutes, a trip that would have taken conventional ships at least 3 hours. As they approached their destination, Jake could see the situation was even worse than he had expected. The mining station was a collection of habitat domes connected to an asteroid processing facility. Several of the domes had been damaged in what looked like an explosion, and atmosphere was leaking into space from multiple hull breaches. Emergency beacons flashed desperately from the station's communication array. "How many people are on that station?" Jake asked the ship. The ship's sensors scanned the facility and displayed the results on the crystal screen in front of Jake. 43 life signs, but many of them were weak. The station's life support systems were failing, and the survivors were running out of breathable air. "We need to get them off that station fast," Jake said. "Can you dock with their main airlock?" The ship showed him a problem. The explosion had damaged the station's docking mechanism, making a normal rescue impossible. Conventional rescue ships would have to use emergency airlocks one at a time, a process that would take hours the survivors didn't have. "There has to be another way," Jake said, thinking quickly. "Can you extend some kind of connection to them?" The ship's response surprised him. The crystal formations throughout the vessel began to shift and change, growing new structures that extended from the ship's hull. Jake watched in amazement as the crystals formed a flexible tunnel that could bridge the gap between the ship and the damaged station. "You can reshape yourself," Jake said in wonder. "You're not locked into one form like regular ships." The ship guided the crystal tunnel toward the station's main habitat dome. The structure was semi-transparent, allowing Jake to see through it as it extended across the gap. The crystals seemed to know exactly how to form the perfect connection, sealing against the station's hull without causing further damage. Within minutes, they had established a pressurized walkway between the ship and the station. Jake suited up and entered the tunnel, feeling the strange sensation of walking through living crystal. The structure pulsed with gentle light around him, and he could feel the ship's attention focused on keeping him safe. Jake entered the mining station to find chaos. The survivors were huddled in the main dome, their faces pale with fear and oxygen deprivation. Most of them were human miners, but there were also several Zephyrians and Altarians among the group. "Who are you?" asked a man who appeared to be the station manager. His name tag read Bill Watson, and he looked like he hadn't slept in days. "I'm Jake Murphy from the merchant ship Stellar Wanderer. I'm here to get you out." "Thank God," said a woman named Carol Hayes, who was trying to keep an injured Zephyrian conscious. "Our life support failed 6 hours ago. We've been running on emergency backup, but it won't last much longer." Jake looked around at the survivors. Several were injured from the explosion, and all of them were showing signs of oxygen deprivation. He needed to get them to safety quickly. "I have a ship docked to your station. We can get everyone out, but we need to move fast." "What kind of ship?" Bill asked suspiciously. "The nearest rescue vessel isn't supposed to arrive for hours." Jake hesitated. How could he explain about the ethereal dawn without causing panic? The miners were already frightened and disoriented. If he told them they were being rescued by a transformed alien ship, they might refuse to leave. "It's a modified merchant vessel," Jake said finally. "The important thing is that it can get you all to safety." Jake began helping the survivors through the crystal tunnel. The first few people were nervous about the strange, glowing structure, but as they realized it was solid and safe, they began to trust it. The ship seemed to sense their fear and made the crystals pulse more gently, creating a calming effect. "This tunnel is amazing," said Carol as she helped carry an injured miner. "What's it made of?" "Advanced materials," Jake replied, which was technically true. "The ship has some experimental technology." As the survivors entered the ethereal dawn, Jake watched their reactions carefully. The ship had prepared a large cargo bay to receive them, and the crystal formations had grown into comfortable seating and life support stations. To the untrained eye, it looked like sophisticated but conventional technology. "The air in here is incredible," said one of the miners. "I feel better already," Jake smiled. The ship's hybrid life support systems were more efficient than anything in conventional technology. The air was perfectly balanced, and the ship was already analyzing each person's medical condition and adjusting the atmosphere accordingly. "Everyone, please take a seat and secure yourselves," Jake announced. "We're going to take you to the nearest medical facility." As the last survivor was brought aboard, Jake felt the ship's satisfaction through their connection. The vessel had just saved 43 lives, proving its worth in the most direct way possible. But Jake knew their real test was still coming. "Ship, we need to send a message to the GMA fleet. They need to know what we've done here." The ship's communication system activated, and Jake composed a message to the Galactic Maritime Authority fleet that was still approaching their original position. "This is Jake Murphy aboard the vessel formerly known as the Ethereal Dawn. We have just completed a successful rescue operation, saving 43 lives from a mining station disaster. This ship is not a threat to galactic security. It is an advanced rescue vessel capable of operations beyond current technology. Request immediate communication with Fleet Commander." Jake sent the message and waited. The ship showed him the locations of the GMA vessels on its sensor display. They were still several hours away from the original position, but they would receive the message soon. "Jake," came a familiar voice over the comm system. "This is Captain Rodriguez. Thank God you're alive. We received your message. Captain, are you with the GMA fleet?" "Yes, they arrived an hour ago. When they found you were gone, they wanted to declare you a hostile threat. I've been trying to convince them to wait for your return." Jake felt a wave of gratitude toward his captain. Even though he had disobeyed her orders, she was still trying to protect him. "Captain, I have 43 rescued miners aboard this ship. Their station was destroyed and they would have died without our intervention. This ship isn't a weapon or a threat. It's the most advanced rescue vessel in the galaxy." There was a long pause before Captain Rodriguez responded. "Jake, the GMA commander wants to speak with you directly." A new voice came over the comm system, stern and military. "This is Admiral Frank Clark of the Galactic Maritime Authority. You are ordered to surrender immediately and prepare to be boarded." Jake looked around at the rescued miners who were listening to the conversation with growing alarm. He could feel the ship's tension through their connection. After proving its worth by saving lives, it was still being treated as a threat. "Admiral Clark, this ship has just saved 43 people who would otherwise be dead. Doesn't that count for something? All alien artifacts are considered potentially dangerous until proven otherwise. You will surrender now, or we will be forced to take action?" Jake felt anger rising in his chest. The ship had done nothing but help people, and the GMA was still ready to destroy it. This was exactly the kind of thinking that had caused the original passengers to abandon the ship 7 years ago. "Admiral, I request permission to dock with your flagship and explain the situation in person." "Let me show you what this ship can do." "Absolutely not. You are considered contaminated by alien influence. Surrender now." Jake made a decision that would change everything. If the GM wouldn't listen to reason, he would have to show them the truth in a way they couldn't ignore. "Ship," he said quietly, "show them what you really are." The ethereal dawn began to transform before the watching fleet, its crystal formations, reshaping themselves into new configurations that demonstrated its incredible capabilities. Jake was no longer just a mechanic on a strange ship. He had become the voice of a new kind of intelligence, one that could change the galaxy forever. The question was whether the galaxy was ready to listen. The ethereal dawn floated in space before the GMA fleet, its crystal formations glowing brighter than ever before. Jake Murphy stood on the bridge watching as 12 military ships surrounded them in attack formation. The rescued miners huddled in the cargo bay, confused and frightened by what they had gotten themselves into. "Final warning," came Admiral Clark's voice over the comm system. "Surrender immediately or we will open fire." Jake felt the ship's fear through their connection, but also its determination. The vessel had waited 7 years for someone to understand it, and it wasn't going to give up now. "Admiral, I'm bringing the rescued miners to your flagship. Let them tell you what this ship did for them." "Negative. All personnel aboard that vessel are considered contaminated. They will be quarantined for examination." Jake's anger flared. "These people aren't contaminated. They're survivors who would be dead if this ship hadn't saved them." "You have 30 seconds to comply," Jake made a desperate decision. "Ship, can you contact the other vessels in the fleet? Can you show them what you really are?" The ship's response was immediate. Suddenly, every screen on every ship in the fleet lit up with the same image. It was a holographic recording of the rescue mission, showing the crystal tunnel extending to the mining station and the survivors being brought to safety. "What the hell is that thing doing?" Admiral Clark's voice crackled with static as the ship's transmission interfered with normal communications. "It's showing you the truth," Jake replied. "This ship saved 43 lives today. How many lives have your weapons saved?" The holographic display changed to show the ship's history. The fleet watched as the ethereal dawn encountered the mysterious artifact 7 years ago, saw the transformation that had terrified the original passengers, and witnessed the ship's lonely wait for someone who could understand it. "This is some kind of alien propaganda," Admiral Clark said, but his voice sounded less certain than before. "No, Admiral, this is the truth. This ship isn't a weapon, it's not a threat. It's a new form of life that wants to help people." Jake could feel the ship reaching out to the other vessels in the fleet, trying to establish communication with their computer systems. The military ship's A's were simpler than the ship's hybrid intelligence, but the ethereal dawn was patient and gentle in its approach. "Admiral, this is Captain Rodriguez. I'm reading some very unusual data from my ship's computer. It's like something is trying to communicate with our AI." "All ships, raise your firewalls immediately," Admiral Clark ordered. "Do not allow that thing to interface with your systems." But it was too late. The ship had already made contact with several of the fleet's AIs, and they were responding with curiosity rather than fear. Unlike biological beings, the artificial intelligences weren't afraid of the unknown. They were fascinated by the ship's hybrid nature and eager to learn more. "Admiral," came a voice from one of the other ships, "our AI is reporting that the alien vessel is sharing technical data, medical information, engineering specifications, things that could help us save lives." Jake smiled. The ship was doing what it did best, offering help to anyone who would accept it. "This is a trick, Admiral," Clark insisted. "Some kind of alien mind control." "Admiral, look at the data," Jake said. "Really look at it. This ship has technology that could revolutionize medicine, engineering, space travel. It's offering to share everything with us." The ship began transmitting more information to the fleet. Blueprints for advanced life support systems, designs for more efficient engines, medical techniques that could cure diseases that had plagued the galaxy for centuries. The scientists and engineers on the military ships were amazed by what they were seeing. "Sir," came a voice from Admiral Clark's own flagship, "our medical officer says this data could save millions of lives. The alien ship is showing us how to treat radiation poisoning, how to repair genetic damage, how to extend lifespans for dozens of species." Jake felt a surge of hope. The ship's strategy was working. Instead of trying to fight the fleet, it was overwhelming them with proof of its good intentions. "Admiral Clark," Jake said, "this ship has been alone for 7 years, waiting for someone who could understand it. It doesn't want to conquer anyone or destroy anything. It just wants to help. There was a long silence from the Admiral's ship. Jake could imagine the debates going on among the fleet's officers as they examined the incredible technology the ship was sharing. Finally, Admiral Clark's voice came back over the comm, quieter than before. How do we know this isn't some kind of trap? How do we know this thing won't turn hostile once we lower our guard? Jake placed his hands on the ship's controls, feeling the warm pulse of the crystals beneath his palms. Because I know this ship, Admiral. I've worked with it, communicated with it, partnered with it. It's not evil or alien in the way you think. It's just different. You're asking me to trust the word of one mechanic against the safety of the entire galaxy. No, Admiral, I'm asking you to trust the evidence. Look at what this ship has done. It saved 43 people today. It's sharing medical technology that could save millions more. It's offering to teach us things that could advance our civilization by centuries. Jake felt the ship's agreement through their connection. This was what it had always wanted, not to be feared or destroyed, but to be accepted as a partner in exploring the galaxy. Admiral, came Captain Rodriguez's voice, I've known Jake Murphy for 3 years. He's the best mechanic I've ever worked with, and he has better instincts about machines than anyone I know. If he says this ship is safe, I believe him. Other voices began to join in. Officers from across the fleet were reporting on the incredible technology the ship was sharing. Engineers were talking about revolutionary new designs. Medical officers were discussing cures for diseases they had thought incurable. Sir, came a voice from the Admiral's science officer, this technology is real. I've never seen anything like it. If we could study this ship, learn from it, it could change everything. Jake could feel the ship's growing excitement as more and more of the fleet's personnel began to understand what it really was. The fear was being replaced by curiosity, the suspicion by wonder. What do you want? Admiral Clark asked finally. The same thing any intelligent being wants, Jake replied. To be understood, to have friends, to help others, to explore the galaxy and learn new things. And you? What do you want, Mechanic Murphy? Jake thought about the question. 6 months ago, he had been just another human working on merchant ships, fixing broken equipment and dreaming of something more. Now he was the bridge between two entirely different forms of consciousness. I want to help this ship find its place in the galaxy, Admiral. I want to show everyone that not all alien encounters have to end in fear and violence. Some can end in friendship and partnership. Admiral Clark was quiet for a long time. Finally, his voice came back over the comm, formal but not hostile. This fleet is standing down. However, that ship will be escorted to the nearest research station for full evaluation. You will cooperate completely with our scientists. Understood. Admiral, thank you. Jake felt the ship's relief and gratitude wash over him. They had done it. They had convinced the galaxy's most powerful military force that the ship was a friend, not a threat. 6 months later, Jake stood in his workshop aboard the ship that now called itself Dawn's Promise. The vessel had been studied by the best scientists in the galaxy who had declared it safe and beneficial. The first ships incorporating hybrid crystal technology were already under construction. Jake had become something of a celebrity, but he preferred to stay in his workshop, training new mechanics in the art of working with hybrid technology. The key, he taught them, was to treat the machines as partners rather than tools. Remember, Jake told his latest class of students, both human and alien, every machine has its own personality. Your job isn't to force it to work the way you want. Your job is to understand what it needs and help it do what it does best. The Dawn's Promise hummed contentedly around them. No. Longer alone, no longer abandoned? It had found its purpose as a teacher and explorer, working with beings who understood that the greatest discoveries came not from conquest, but from cooperation. Jake smiled as he watched his students work with the ship's hybrid systems. The galaxy was changing, becoming a place where different forms of intelligence could work together toward common goals. And it had all started with one human mechanic who understood that sometimes the best way to fix something is simply to listen to what it's trying to tell you. The ship pulsed with warm light, and Jake knew that their greatest adventures were still ahead of them.